In today's episode of The Way I See It, I question, could Cuba be our downfall? Thank you so much for tuning in to another episode of The Way I See It. I am recording this on July the 15th. It won't air this day, but, and I don't think I've recorded an episode in like a month. And I certainly haven't put out an episode in about 3 weeks. Or maybe longer. Maybe it's been a month since an episode came out and longer than that since I recorded, because it really feels like it's been a lifetime. But it's summertime. I've been off doing things and, living life. And a lot of things come across my, filter, and I think, oh, I should do an episode on that. And then just it flitters away and time goes by. And if I don't have a chance to really sit down kind of by myself and do it, it doesn't get done. I'm currently by myself in my home and no one else is here to distract me. So I had time. I'm going to get a few episodes out of the way and they'll come out here in the next few days. So today I'm talking about Cuba and all the issues going on with it and kind of why I have this clickbait idea of, could Cuba be our downfall? And I'm going to get into that. But if you are getting more and more aggravated with just media, mainstream social media, that kind of thing, and you're looking for another outlet, come join me on Locals. I have a channel myself, and then I'm part of another group. There's several groups on Locals. It was started by Dave Rubin, and you have to pay to join these groups. Well, you don't have to pay to join the groups. You have to pay to be active in the groups by being able to comment or post your own things. So, it does good. You might follow a bunch of different people and kind of just read posts in a bunch of different groups, but you may say, I'm only going to really be active in 2 groups. That's what I do. I'm in Kira Davis's group, Davis Nation. I pay about $7 a month to be in that. And then I have my own group, The Way I See It. And if you join that one, it's only $2 a month. I set it as low as possible. So come, you can post articles, photos, videos, status updates, that whole thing, the whole shebang. At first you may be like, well, I won't see any of my family members. Like, the only reason I'm still active on Facebook is because that's where my aunts and uncles and cousins and folks I went to high school with, we're all on there. It just is so aggravating to switch to something else, and you want to take a stand, but then nobody is on there. And while I get that, and you may say, well, I'll still use Facebook for posting pictures of the puppies, that kind of thing. You may want a place where you know that what you post is not going to be censored, and Locals is the place to do it. And if you want to reach a broader audience, join a bigger community like Dave Rubin's community, or Jordan Peterson has a community, Michael Malice. I mean, and I know you're thinking, I don't know who some of those folks are. Think about who you'd want to follow, and go to Locals and search and just check it out for free and see if there's people on there you'd like to follow. Because I'm telling you, it's the way of the future, the way of the future, the way of the future. So let's get into it here with Cuba. The thing is, they're communists. They've been under communist control since the late 50s, early 60s. And over that course of time, China has come under communist control and has become a leading world power. And I feel like we're at a place where it is becoming very noticeable that we have to kiss China's rear, for lack of a better way to put it. They have control of a lot of, our medicines and stuff that we get, like we ship them over from China, right? They build things, we buy things, they're cheap. They control a lot of technology development, and they're a huge market for movies, right? That's why you had John Cena on, TikTok or whoever, China owns TikTok, Instagram, whoever he was making a video speaking in Chinese, apologizing for calling Hong Kong a country or something like that, when China's like, they're part of China. And because they're a huge market, they're like a fifth of the, or maybe even a fourth of the profits for the Fast and Furious movies come out of China. So in a lot of ways, they have us by the you-know-whats. And so the reason I question what's going on with Cuba and how Biden will handle it, and whether Biden's going to make it to 2024 or not, that's a whole other issue to debate. But it's because I don't necessarily see this being like the Cuban Missile Crisis in, what was it, 62 or whenever, when Russia was backing Cuba. You had Russia coming there, and they're got missile bases, and they're like threatening to launch missiles, and we're threatening to launch missiles, and our fingers on the button, and then Kennedy and Khrushchev are talking, and we were watching an episode, Lydia and I were watching an episode of Call the Midwife a few weeks ago, and it was set because that series is set in the late 50s and early 60s, and it was that time in 1962, and in that episode, they were all like going to bed that night wondering if everybody was going to be at World War III when they woke up the next day, and they found out that peaceful negotiations had taken place. But things are at such a height of tension here in America when it comes to freedoms and our liberties, and people talking about things like a national divorce. And there's this we're becoming more and more divided here in America over our own liberty and freedom, and how we need to be standing with folks in other parts of the world who want their freedom, like in Hong Kong. Of course, we didn't want to go rescue Hong Kong because we'd have to go to war with China to free Hong Kong. But then you've got Cuba, which is not part of China, and all these people now are protesting, and the government, the U.S., is kind of sitting back watching, except Biden is not wanting to accept Cuban immigrants. He'll let them just run across the border of Texas coming up from Mexico. But if they want to come from Cuba, no, we don't want to take you. Again, I think this has to do with China, but it could also have to do with people think that they don't want Cuban immigrants because they would likely come and vote Republican, and he doesn't want that. Whatever the reason being, they're just not wanting to really help the Cuban people. And if it were to be one of these where they really got together and got their weapons and started launching a serious attack against their dictators, their communist dictators, I would think that China would step in to bolster that government. And if that were the case, what would America do? Because if America sits back and lets that government just squash those people, it just shows that we really have just given up. We've said, we're not the world leader, China is, and we just really don't want to cross them. And if we do say, no, we want to help these people be free, we're gonna continue to kind of do whatever we can to, right? We want to do it in a sort of non-combative way. I'm not suggesting we should send helicopters and a Navy fleet in there and start helping with this coup necessarily. But we've always had these trade embargoes and sanctions and other things. But so if we said, no, we're going to continue to kind of clamp down and make things hard for that communist government because we really want that to break down. Well, what if China said, well, in that case, we're going to do this to you, the U.S. We're going to do these embargoes or sanctions or whatever, or we're going to just, completely screw up your technical communications or whatever. They could do all kinds of stuff to us that would put us in a world of pain real quick. So my thoughts on Cuba are, I'm kind of I would welcome it. I'm let's do it. I don't foresee that we're going to start launching nukes at each other because, honestly, there's so many nuclear weapons in the world that if countries that had them started launching them, those countries themselves would be destroyed. The world's population could not withstand all the nuclear damage that would be done by launching all these nukes. So that's not really what I'm worried about. I'm worried about more of a technological war, a medicine war, a trade war, these kinds of wars that would make our lives here in America hard in a matter of minutes or days at the most. We would suddenly say, you know what, we got to figure things out here. Otherwise, we're going to be a third world country. Speaking of you know, all this business that's going on in South Africa now too. Some folks are like, this could be America in a few years if we're not careful. This is going to be America in 5 to 10 years. I will say South Africa has never had the stability of governmental structure that we have had since the late 1700s when we first gained our freedom. So I don't necessarily worry that that's going to happen to us, at least not in 5 to 10 years, but who knows? I mean, things change so quickly now, especially in this quick communication, technological development age, and the proliferation of weapons and the disintegration of moral fabric and religion and all that. Things could go down the drain faster than I think they could go down the drain. But usually people who have doomsday prophecies are proven wrong. So until one day when they're proven right, I suppose. You've had revolutions happen all over the world throughout history. Doesn't mean it can't happen right here in the U.S. within the next 5 to 10 years. I just don't know which direction it's going to go. And that's why I wonder if Cuba could be our downfall, because this struggle that's happening in Cuba and the outcry that's coming from those people and from the people in Florida, you know, people here in America who are related to those people in Cuba, and within Congress, you know, you have these people taking their sides, and looming large right over here is China. And they're communist. They're the big communist power now. It's not Russia. I mean, Russia's corrupt. Russia's got all these other problems, but that communist bloc has broken down. So there's no USSR anymore. So China has risen up as that, do we really want to cross them? And we're just not as combative with them as we were with the USSR, because in the days of the USSR, even though there was a threat of they have weapons and we have weapons, we didn't depend on them. Our economy did not depend on the USSR. And we strongly depend on China, unfortunately. And that's why I wonder how Biden and how the government is going to handle this Cuba thing. I have a feeling they're just going to sit here and ignore it and do nothing and just let that government squash those people and continue that communist regime, because we just don't want to have to get into it with China. But then, hopefully that will result in some crazy election results here in the next few years in the U.S. for people who say, why don't we elect people who are going to stand up for freedom and help those in other parts of the world who want freedom? So we'll see. So please like this video and subscribe. And this is just me sharing my thoughts about Cuba and this whole thing. And I would love your input. This is really more, this isn't like I'm teaching a biblical concept like I do some of the other videos. This kind of video really lends itself to you telling me what you think. And I would love to hear, and, you know, especially if you watch this on any of my social media, really, just give me a comment what you think is going on with Cuba/China. If you think that's even related. No one's really talked about that in conjunction with each other, like Cuba, China, do they go together? Does one affect the other? And how we respond to Cuba. Do you think our relationship with China plays into how we respond to Cuba? Because I think it does. So anyway, please like this video. Please remember to subscribe if you haven't done that already. And I'll talk to you next time.